Listen, not every tear is a sign of weakness. Some tears are evidence that your heart is still alive in a world that has gone numb. You thought you were too sensitive, that you feel too much, break too easily, care more than you should. But Ibn Arabi would whisper something deeper. He would say your heart was not made to be hard, it was made to be clear, like glass, so the light of Allah can pass through it. And that is why you cry. Because a heart that carries Noor cannot remain untouched. It feels like something that others ignore. It responds when others stay silent. It softens where others become cold. What overwhelms you is not weakness. It is the weight of something sacred inside you. You were not born too sensitive. You were chosen to feel, chosen to carry, chosen to remain soft when the world demanded hardness. So, the next time tears fall from your eyes, don't rush to hide them. Pause and understand, this is not you breaking. This is your soul remembering what it was created to hold. The secret you were never told about your tears. No one explained to you what your tears truly are. You were only taught how to hide them, how to swallow them, how to apologize for them. So you grew up believing that every tear was a sign that something inside you was fragile, unstable, or incomplete. But the truth moves in the opposite direction. Your tears are not evidence of something breaking, they are evidence of something still alive, still aware, still connected to a reality that many hearts have lost access to. A heart does not cry without reason. Even when the mind cannot explain it, the heart is responding to something it recognizes beyond words. It feels shifts that cannot be measured, carries impressions that cannot be seen, and reacts to meanings that do not appear on the surface of things. When you cry, it is not always about what is happening in front of you. It is often about what your soul is witnessing behind it. There are people who pass through life untouched. They hear pain and remain distant. They see suffering and remain composed. Their hearts have learned to protect themselves by becoming less receptive. But your heart chose a different path. It did not build walls, it remained open, and because it is open, it receives more. Not only your own emotions, but the weight of unspoken realities, the echoes of what others carry, and the subtle movements of truth that pass quietly through existence. This is why your tears come without warning, not because you are unstable, but because you are responsive. Your heart answers what it perceives. It reacts to sincerity, to loss, to beauty, to injustice, to presence. It does not wait for permission from logic. It moves according to a deeper awareness that cannot be trained or silenced without losing something essential. Within every tear, there is a form of recognition, a silent acknowledgement that something meaningful has touched you. Sometimes it is the recognition of pain that was never expressed. Sometimes it is the recognition of beauty that cannot be held. Sometimes it is the recognition of a truth that your soul already knows, but your mind has not yet accepted. Your tears are the language of that recognition. You were not taught this, so you mistook your tears for weakness. You tried to control them, to reduce them, to make them disappear so you could feel more like everyone else. But in doing so, you were moving against the nature that was placed within you. A heart that is meant to feel deeply cannot become numb without losing its clarity, and clarity is what allows it to receive what others cannot. Your tears are not random. They follow a hidden order. They arrive when something within you aligns with something beyond you. It is a meeting point between your inner state and a reality that is not always visible. And when that meeting happens, the heart responds in the only way it knows how. It softens, it opens, and it releases. This release is not a collapse. It is a form of purification. Each tear carries away what the heart cannot hold forever. It clears space. It refines perception. It keeps the heart from becoming heavy with what it was never meant to store indefinitely. Without this release, even the strongest heart would become clouded. So what you were never told is this: your tears are not a sign that you are too much. They are a sign that your heart has not been sealed. They show that something within you is still in contact with truth, still capable of responding, still willing to remain open in a world that rewards indifference. Do not rush to silence this response. Do not treat it as something that needs to be corrected. A heart that cries is a heart that is still able to receive. And a heart that receives carries a light that cannot pass through what is closed. What you feel is not an error. It is a form of awareness. And your tears are its evidence. The difference between a heavy heart and a chosen heart. Many people live with a heavy heart, yet not every heavy heart carries the same meaning. From the outside, it may appear identical. Both feel tired, both feel overwhelmed, both struggle to carry what is inside. But the source of that weight is completely different, and understanding this difference changes the way you see yourself. A heavy heart is burdened because it holds what was never meant to stay. It collects pain, disappointment, resentment, and unprocessed emotions. It clings to what hurt it, replays what broke it, and stores what should have been released. This kind of heart becomes crowded. It feels suffocated, not because it is deep, but because it is full of things that block its clarity. Its weight comes from accumulation. A chosen heart is also heavy, but not because it is filled with darkness. It is heavy because it carries something luminous. It holds awareness, sensitivity, perception, and a depth that allows it to feel beyond the surface. Its weight does not come from what it is holding on to, but from what it is capable of receiving. This heart does not store pain in the same way. It transforms it, understands it, and lets it pass through. Its heaviness comes from capacity. One heart is weighed down, the other is entrusted. The heavy heart becomes exhausted because it is trying to contain what should have been released. It resists, tightens, and closes itself in an attempt to protect. The more it protects, the more it traps itself inside its own burden. Its world becomes smaller, and its sensitivity turns into discomfort. The chosen heart moves differently. It does not close in the same way. It remains open even when it feels the weight. This openness allows it to experience deeply, but also to release. It does not hold everything forever. It lets meaning pass through it without becoming imprisoned by it. Its sensitivity becomes a form of perception, not a source of suffocation. This is why you feel deeply but do not stay broken in the same place. Something within you refuses to harden completely. Even when you try, even when you tell yourself to stop feeling so much, your heart returns to its nature. It softens again. It responds again. It opens again. This is not weakness, it is alignment with what you were given. A heavy heart asks, "Why do I feel like this?" A chosen heart begins to ask, "What am I being shown through this?" The first question leads to frustration. The second leads to understanding. Your experience is not just about emotion, it is about perception. You are sensing layers that others pass by without noticing. You feel the tone behind words, the meaning behind silence, the weight behind simple moments. This depth is not common, and because it is not common, it is often misunderstood, even by you. You tried to compare yourself to those who seem unaffected. You wondered why they move through things so easily, while you feel everything so intensely. But ease is not always a sign of strength. Sometimes it is the absence of depth, and intensity is not always a flaw. Sometimes it is the presence of something refined. A chosen heart is not free from difficulty. It feels more, sees more, and carries more awareness. But it also holds the ability to transform what it receives. It turns pain into understanding, confusion into reflection, and emotion into insight. It does not escape the weight, it gives it meaning. This is the difference. One heart is buried under what it carries. The other is elevated by what it carries. So, if your heart feels heavy, do not rush to assume something is wrong with you. Ask yourself what kind of weight you are feeling. Is it the weight of things you are holding on to, or the weight of something you have been trusted to carry? because a chosen heart will always feel the weight before it understands its purpose. And once it understands, that same weight becomes light. Why sensitive souls cannot survive in superficial worlds? A sensitive soul does not suffer because it is weak. It suffers because it is placed in environments that do not match its depth. What hurts you is not simply what people say or do, it is the emptiness behind it, the lack of sincerity, the absence of presence. You are not reacting to events alone. You are reacting to the unseen quality within them. A superficial world is built on surfaces. It moves quickly, speaks loudly, and values what is visible more than what is real. It rewards appearances, quick responses, and shallow connections that require little awareness. In such a space, depth feels out of place, silence feels uncomfortable, reflection feels unnecessary, and a heart that seeks meaning begins to feel like it does not belong. Your soul was not shaped for this kind of existence. It does not know how to remain satisfied with what has no depth. It searches for something real beneath everything it encounters. When it does not find it, it becomes restless, not because it is ungrateful, but because it recognizes that something essential is missing. This is why you feel drained around certain people. It is not always about conflict. Sometimes nothing obvious happens, yet you leave feeling empty, heavy, or disconnected. Your soul is responding to the lack of substance. It cannot draw nourishment from what has no depth, just as a body cannot be sustained by what has no substance. A superficial world asks you to reduce yourself. It asks you to speak less truth, to feel less deeply, to ignore what you sense, and to adapt to what is easy rather than what is real. It encourages you to become more acceptable, more convenient, more aligned with what is common. And each time you try to do this, something inside you resists. That resistance is not stubbornness, it is preservation. Because every time you ignore your depth, you move further away from your nature. You begin to feel disconnected from yourself. You may appear to fit in, but inwardly, something becomes quiet in a way that does not feel peaceful. It feels distant. A sensitive soul cannot survive by pretending. It cannot continue to exist in a state where it denies what it feels and sees. It may try for a while, but the cost becomes too great. The more it suppresses its awareness, the more it loses its clarity. And without clarity, it begins to feel lost, even if everything around it appears normal. This is why you withdraw at times, not because you dislike people, but because you are protecting what remains true within you. Distance becomes a way to return to yourself. Silence becomes a way to hear what was being drowned out. Solitude becomes a place where your soul can breathe again. You are not meant to live on the surface. You are meant to move through meaning. You are drawn to sincerity, to depth, to conversations that carry weight, to connections that feel real rather than convenient. When you encounter these things, your heart feels at ease. It expands, it softens, it becomes steady. This is how you know what aligns with you. The struggle is not that the world is entirely superficial. The struggle is that much of it is, and you can feel the difference. You cannot ignore it. You cannot pretend not to notice. Your awareness does not allow you to settle where there is no depth. This does not mean you are meant to isolate yourself completely. It means you are meant to be selective. Not everything deserves your energy. Not every space deserves your presence. Not every voice deserves your attention. When you begin to understand this, your sensitivity stops feeling like a burden and starts becoming a guide. It shows you where there is truth and where there is emptiness. It reveals what nourishes you and what drains you. It protects you from becoming something you are not. A superficial world may continue as it is, but you are not required to become like it. Your role is not to lose your depth in order to survive within it. Your role is to remain as you are while learning where your depth is meant to be placed. Because a sensitive soul does not fail in a superficial world. It simply refuses to become one with it. The hidden burden of carrying Noor. People often imagine light as something gentle, something that only comforts and soothes. They think of it as ease, clarity, and peace without weight. But the kind of light placed within a heart is not always soft in the way people expect. It does not only illuminate, it reveals. And what it reveals is not always easy to carry. When a heart carries Noor, it begins to see what is usually hidden. It notices intentions behind words, meanings behind silence, and truth behind appearances. It does not stop at what is visible. It moves deeper, sensing layers that others pass without awareness. This depth of perception is not something you learned, it is something you were given. And because of this, your experience of the world is different. You cannot take things at face value. You feel when something is off, even if no one else reacts. You sense when a connection lacks sincerity, even if it appears complete. You notice contradictions, unspoken tensions, and emotional undercurrents that remain invisible to others. This awareness does not come and go, it stays with you, and that is where the weight begins. Carrying Noor means carrying awareness that does not turn off. It follows you into conversations, into relationships, into quiet moments when nothing is being said. It keeps your heart alert, receptive, and responsive. While others move through experiences lightly, you move through them with depth. What passes quickly through others settles longer within you, not because you hold on to it, but because you perceive more within it. This is the burden that remains unseen. People may look at you and think you are simply emotional or too affected by things that seem small. They do not realize that you are not reacting to what is small, you are responding to what is layered beneath it. A single word may carry a weight they do not hear. A simple moment may contain a meaning they do not recognize. Your heart receives all of it at once. This does not make life heavier in the way people assume. It makes life more intense. Intensity is not always comfortable. It stretches your capacity. It asks you to hold more awareness, more understanding, and more feeling at the same time. It asks you to remain open while experiencing things that could easily cause you to close. And this is where many misunderstand their own nature. They think the discomfort means something is wrong. They believe the intensity should be reduced, controlled, or avoided. They try to become less aware, less sensitive, less affected. But reducing what you feel does not remove the weight, it only disconnects you from what you were meant to carry. A heart that carries Noor is not meant to become numb, it is meant to become clear. Clarity does not remove depth, it refines it. As your heart learns to remain clear, it stops holding on to what passes through it. It still feels deeply, but it does not become trapped in what it feels. It recognizes, responds, and releases. The weight does not disappear, but it changes form. It becomes something you can carry without losing yourself within it. This is part of the trust placed within you. Noor is not given without responsibility. It asks you to remain honest with what you perceive. It asks you not to ignore truth when you sense it. It asks you to stay present, even when presence feels heavy. And it asks you to protect the clarity of your heart, because once it becomes clouded, the light no longer passes through it in the same way. This is why certain environments exhaust you, not because you are weak, but because your heart is working more than others. It is processing more, sensing more, and holding more awareness at once. When you are surrounded by confusion, insincerity, or emotional noise, your heart absorbs the impact of all of it. It tries to understand, to make sense, to remain clear within it. This effort is quiet, but it is real. And still, you continue. Not because it is easy, but because something within you does not allow you to turn away from what you feel. Even when you try to ignore it, your awareness returns. Even when you try to simplify things, your perception deepens again. This persistence is not something you chose. It is something that was placed within you. There is also a loneliness that comes with this. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from feeling unseen in what you carry. You may speak, but others do not fully understand what you are trying to express. You may feel deeply, but there are few who can meet you at that level of perception. This creates a quiet distance, even in the presence of others. But this distance is not a sign that something is missing. It is a sign that what you carry is not common. A heart that carries Noor walks a path that is not always shared. It sees things others are not ready to see. It feels like things others have learned to ignore, and it remains open in places where others have chosen to close. This does not isolate you in the way it first appears. It distinguishes you. The burden, then, is not meant to be removed. It is meant to be understood. When you begin to understand what you carry, the weight changes. It no longer feels like something pressing against you. It begins to feel like something is moving through you. You stop asking why you feel so much, and you begin to see what your feelings are revealing. This shift does not make everything easy, but it makes everything meaningful. You start to recognize that your sensitivity is not random. Your awareness is not accidental. The way your heart responds is not something to correct. It is something to protect and refine. Because Noor does not remain where it is not honored. It stays where it is recognized, where it is allowed to move freely, and where it is not blocked by denial or resistance. When you accept what you carry, you allow that light to continue passing through you, touching everything you experience. And this is where the hidden burden reveals its purpose. What once felt heavy begins to guide you. What once overwhelmed you begins to clarify things for you. What once made you question yourself begins to show you who you are. You are not carrying something that is meant to break you. You are carrying something that is meant to shape you. And the weight you feel is the measure of what your heart has been trusted to hold. Why you break faster than others. You have often wondered why your reactions seem quicker than those around you. A word is spoken, a tone shifts, a silence appears, and something inside you responds before you can even explain it. While others remain composed or unaffected, you feel the weight immediately. This has led you to believe that you are fragile, that you lack control, or that something within you is not as strong as it should be. Yet what you are experiencing is not a lack of strength, but a difference in how your heart receives and processes what it encounters. A heart does not break quickly without a reason. It breaks quickly when it is able to perceive more than what is visible. It senses not only what is being said, but also what is being held back. It feels not only the surface of an interaction, but the intention and emotion beneath it. This deeper perception shortens the distance between experience and response. What others take time to notice, you recognize immediately, and because you recognize it, you feel it without delay. Your heart does not wait for confirmation. It does not require repeated exposure to understand what is present. It responds as soon as it senses a shift, and this response often appears as breaking. In reality, it is a form of awareness unfolding too quickly for the mind to organize or control. The feeling rises before the explanation, and because of this, it seems sudden and overwhelming. There are hearts that move more slowly. They take time to register what has happened. They analyze, compare, and gradually arrive at understanding. This slower movement can appear as strength, but it is simply a different way of processing. It creates distance between experience and feeling, allowing the person to remain outwardly steady for longer periods. Your heart does not create this distance. It moves directly toward what it perceives. This directness is often misunderstood. It is seen as instability, when in fact it is a form of clarity. You are not breaking because you are weak. You are responding because you are aware. The speed of your response is not a failure of control, but a reflection of how open your heart remains. When something touches your heart, it does not stay at the surface. It travels inward quickly. It reaches places that are already sensitive, already aware, already receptive. This is why your reactions feel intense. You are not only responding to the present moment, but also to the deeper layers that connect to it. Your heart recognizes patterns, meanings, and emotional truths that are not always visible to others. Because of this, your breaking is not as simple as it appears. It is not a single reaction to a single event. It is the result of multiple layers being touched at once. What seems small from the outside carries a depth that your heart cannot ignore. It responds fully, and that fullness is what you experience as breaking. You may have tried to slow this down. You may have told yourself to be less reactive, to take things less seriously, or to become more detached. You may have attempted to hold your feelings back so that you could appear more composed, but each attempt likely felt unnatural, as though you were moving against something within you rather than working with it. A heart that is designed to respond quickly cannot be trained to ignore what it perceives without losing its clarity. It can learn to understand its responses, to hold them with awareness, and to move through them with balance, but it cannot become indifferent without becoming disconnected from its own nature. This is where understanding becomes important. Breaking does not mean you are falling apart. It means your heart is opening in response to what it has encountered. It is a movement, not a failure. It is a sign that something within you remains active, engaged, and aware. When you begin to see it this way, your relationship with your own reactions changes. You stop viewing them as something to be fixed and start recognizing them as something to be understood. Instead of resisting the feeling, you allow yourself to observe it, to see what it is connected to, and to let it move through you without adding judgment. This does not remove the intensity, but it brings clarity to it. You begin to notice that your breaking is not random. It follows a pattern of perception. It appears in response to certain types of experiences, certain environments, and certain forms of interaction. As you become more aware of this pattern, you begin to understand what your heart is sensitive to and why. This understanding allows you to take care of your heart without silencing it. You become more mindful of where you place yourself, of what you allow into your space, and of how you respond when something touches you deeply. You do not try to become someone who does not feel. You learn how to remain present with what you feel. Others may continue to move at a different pace. They may not understand why you respond the way you do, just as you may not understand how they remain unaffected. But this difference is not a measure of strength or weakness. It is a difference in awareness, in perception, and in the way the heart engages with the world. Your heart breaks faster because it reaches further. It moves beyond what is seen and touches what is felt at a deeper level. It does not hesitate to respond, and it does not delay its recognition. This speed is not something to be corrected. It is something to be honored with understanding. When you stop measuring yourself against others, you begin to see that your way of experiencing life carries its own form of depth. Your reactions, though intense, are honest. They reflect a heart that is not closed, not distant, and not disconnected. They reflect a heart that remains present in what it encounters. And a heart that remains present will always respond, not because it lacks strength, but because it carries awareness that does not turn away. The loneliness of being spiritually awake. There is a kind of loneliness that does not come from being alone, but from seeing and feeling in a way that is not easily shared. It is a quiet distance that forms between you and the world around you, not because you wish to separate yourself, but because your inner experience does not fully match what surrounds you. You may sit among others, speak with them, even laugh with them, yet something within you remains aware of a depth that is not being touched. This loneliness begins with awareness. When your perception opens, you start to notice what lies beneath words, behind actions, and within the spaces where nothing is spoken. You sense the difference between what is expressed and what is true. You feel the presence of meaning even in ordinary interactions, and at the same time, you notice when meaning is absent. This awareness does not isolate you by force, but it changes the way you relate to what is around you. Conversations that once felt enough may begin to feel incomplete. not because they are wrong, but because they do not reach the depth your heart is searching for. You may listen, respond, and remain present, yet inside, there is a quiet recognition that something essential is missing. You are not searching for more words, but for more sincerity, more presence, more truth within what is being shared. This creates a distance that is difficult to explain. It is not visible, and it is not always understood. Others may see you as quiet, reserved, or withdrawn, without realizing that your silence is not emptiness. It is a form of listening, a way of remaining connected to something deeper than what is immediately present. A spiritually awake heart does not only observe the world, it feels it from within. It senses the weight of emotions that are not spoken, the tension that is not acknowledged, and the longing that remains hidden beneath ordinary expressions. This constant awareness can make it difficult to fully settle into spaces that are not aligned with it. You may be physically present, but inwardly you remain aware of something beyond the surface. Because of this, you may find yourself seeking solitude, not as an escape, but as a return. In solitude, the noise of the external world becomes quiet, and your inner clarity becomes easier to access. You begin to hear your own thoughts without interference, to feel your own state without confusion, and to reconnect with the awareness that becomes blurred in crowded or superficial environments. This solitude brings peace, but it also highlights the distance you feel from others. You begin to understand that what you are experiencing is not something that can always be shared in simple ways. It requires a level of understanding and presence that is not common. This realization can deepen the sense of loneliness, not because others are lacking, but because your experience is moving in a direction that is not widely traveled. There is also a sensitivity that accompanies this awareness. You feel the emotional states of others more clearly, sometimes even before they express them. You notice shifts in energy, in tone, in intention. This can create a sense of connection, but it can also create a sense of imbalance. You may understand others more than they understand you. You may feel what they carry, while your own inner state remains unseen. This imbalance is not meant to discourage you, but it can feel heavy if it is not understood. You may begin to question why you feel this way, why you notice so much, and why you cannot simply move through life with the same ease you observe in others. These questions arise not because something is wrong, but because your awareness is expanding beyond what is familiar. A spiritually awake heart does not lose its connection to others, but its connection changes. It becomes more selective, more attuned to sincerity, more responsive to depth. You may find that you are drawn to certain individuals who share a similar awareness, even if their way of expressing it is different. These connections feel different, not because they are more intense, but because they are more aligned. Until such connections appear, the path may feel solitary. Yet this solitude is not empty. It is filled with a different kind of presence, one that comes from within rather than from external interaction. As you become more familiar with this inner presence, the loneliness begins to shift. It does not disappear, but it transforms into a form of quiet companionship with your own awareness. You begin to see that what you are experiencing is not separation, but distinction. Your path is not meant to mirror every path around you. It carries its own rhythm, its own depth, its own direction. The distance you feel is not a rejection from the world, but a reflection of the space needed for your awareness to remain clear. With this understanding, your relationship with loneliness changes. It becomes less of a burden and more of a space where your perception can settle without distraction. You no longer see it as something to escape, but as something that allows you to remain connected to what you have come to recognize within yourself. This does not mean you are meant to remain distant from others. It means you are learning how to engage without losing your depth. You are learning how to be present without becoming disconnected from your awareness. This balance takes time to understand, but it develops naturally as you continue to observe and reflect. A spiritually awake heart does not belong to isolation, nor does it fully belong to the surface of the world. It moves between both, carrying its awareness into each space without losing itself. The loneliness you feel is part of this movement. It reminds you that your perception is active, that your awareness is present, and that your connection to something deeper remains intact. And within that connection, you are never truly alone. The moment you realize you were chosen, understanding does not arrive all at once. It unfolds quietly, in a way that does not announce itself, yet changes everything within you. For a long time, you may have lived with questions about your own nature, wondering why your heart feels the way it does, why your reactions are deeper, why your awareness does not rest where others seem comfortable. You may have carried a quiet confusion, sensing that something within you is different, but not knowing how to name it. This realization begins when that confusion starts to soften. What once felt like a problem slowly begins to feel like a pattern. You notice that your sensitivity is not random. It follows a certain direction. It responds to specific kinds of truth, to sincerity, to depth, to meaning. It withdraws from what feels empty, and it opens toward what feels real. This consistency begins to show you that your heart is not unstable, it is guided. As this awareness grows, your perspective shifts. You no longer see your emotions as something that needs to be controlled or reduced. You begin to observe them with a different kind of attention. You notice how your heart responds before your mind can explain. You see how it recognizes what is hidden, how it reacts to what is subtle, how it moves toward what carries depth. This observation brings a quiet clarity. You start to understand that what you carry is not accidental. It has a structure, a purpose that reveals itself through experience. The weight you feel is no longer something you wish to escape. It becomes something you begin to understand, even if that understanding is still unfolding. You see that your heart is not reacting without reason. It is responding to something it has been prepared to perceive. With this understanding, your relationship with yourself changes. You become less critical of your own nature. You stop trying to compare your way of feeling with the way others move through the world. You begin to accept that your path carries a different kind of awareness, one that asks you to remain present with what you feel rather than turn away from it. This acceptance does not make everything easier, but it brings a sense of alignment. You are no longer resisting what is within you. You are no longer trying to become someone who does not feel deeply. Instead, you begin to see your sensitivity as something that has been entrusted to you, something that carries responsibility as much as it carries depth. You start to notice how your awareness shapes your choices. You become more attentive to where you place your energy, to the environments you enter, and to the connections you maintain. You are drawn toward what nourishes your clarity and away from what disturbs it. This is not a form of withdrawal, but a form of understanding. You are learning how to protect what has been placed within you. As this awareness deepens, the idea of being chosen begins to take form within you. It is not a feeling of superiority, nor is it something that separates you from others in a way that creates distance or pride. It is a quiet recognition that your heart has been given a certain capacity, and that this capacity carries meaning. You begin to see that not every heart is asked to feel in the same way. Not every heart is open to the same depth of perception. What you experience is not universal, and because it is not universal, it requires a different kind of care. This recognition brings a sense of responsibility. You understand that what you carry is not meant to be ignored or diminished. You become aware that this path requires patience. Understanding continues to unfold, and there are aspects of your own nature that reveal themselves gradually. You learn to remain with the process, to observe without rushing, to allow your awareness to expand in its own way. This realization also changes the way you see your past experiences. What once felt confusing or overwhelming begins to make sense within a larger picture. You see how certain moments shaped your perception, how certain feelings deepened your awareness, and how even your struggles contributed to the clarity you now carry. Nothing feels wasted. Everything appears connected in a way that was not visible before. As this understanding settles within you, a quiet steadiness begins to form. You are no longer searching for an explanation for who you are. You begin to recognize it directly. Your heart feels more at ease with itself, not because it feels less, but because it understands what it is feeling. You also begin to notice that your awareness brings with it a certain kind of presence. You are able to sit with others in a way that is attentive, to listen in a way that is sincere, and to perceive what is not always spoken. This presence becomes a form of contribution, even if it is not always recognized. What you carry begins to extend beyond you, touching others in ways that are subtle but real. The realization of being chosen does not remove the depth you feel. It gives it context. It allows you to see that your sensitivity, your awareness, and your way of experiencing the world are not without meaning. They are part of something that is unfolding through you. You come to understand that being chosen does not mean being free from difficulty. It means being given the capacity to move through it with awareness. It means carrying a heart that remains open, even when it would be easier to close. It means continuing to feel, to perceive, and to remain present, even when the weight of that presence is not light. With this understanding, your perspective becomes more settled. You are no longer trying to change the nature of your heart. You are learning how to live with it in a way that preserves its clarity. You are learning how to remain connected to what you have come to recognize within yourself. And in this quiet recognition, something within you becomes still, not because everything has been resolved, but because you are no longer in conflict with what you are. You understand that what you carry was never a mistake. It was a trust placed within you, and your role is not to question why it was given, but to carry it with awareness, with care, and with sincerity. This is the moment you stop fighting your own nature. You tried to become stronger by becoming harder, quieter, less emotional. But what if strength was never in becoming less? What if it was in accepting what Allah already placed within you? Ibn Arabi would remind you, the heart that feels is the heart that receives. And the one who carries Noor will always feel its weight before they understand its purpose. So don't rush to fix your sensitivity. Honor it, because one day you will realize the same tears you were ashamed of were the very signs that your soul was awake while others were still asleep. You were never too much. You were entrusted, and Allah does not entrust something so heavy to a heart that is not strong enough to carry it.